My name is Olivia Hart. I'm 32 years old, and last month I found out my own family voted me out of my brother's wedding. Not in a dramatic way, not with a big fight or screaming match. No, this was quieter, colder. My mother simply said, "Everyone agreed. You're not welcome at the wedding." Just like that. Like it was settled. Like it wasn't even cruel. I had just arrived home from work, still holding the gift I'd spent weeks curating for my brother Daniel. It was a handmade photo album, filled with memories from our childhood, annotated in my handwriting, with little notes he used to love when we were kids. I thought maybe I'd surprise him with it, show him that even though we had grown distant, I was still proud, still present, still his sister. But when I opened the door to our family home, my mother was already waiting. Evelyn Hart. Perfect posture, perfect pearls, perfect coldness. She didn't even invite me in. Instead, she stepped out, closed the door behind her, and said without hesitation, "Olivia, I'm going to need you to respect the decision. This day isn't for everyone, and everyone agrees you not being there is best for the tone of the event." The tone. I asked her, politely, calmly, what that meant. She looked me straight in the eye and said, "You know how you are, and Daniel deserves a wedding without tension. You'll understand someday." I didn't shout. I didn't beg. I just stared at her for a long time, and then I handed her the wrapped box. "This was for him," I said. She took it, glanced at the tag, then added softly, "I'll give it to him. But it's better if you don't make this about yourself. Make this about myself." I drove away in silence, the sound of my tires over gravel the only response I had to the woman who had raised me, loved me, at least I thought so, and now treated me like an unwanted footnote in her picture-perfect occasion. I didn't cry that night, not because I wasn't hurt, I was, but something in me cracked differently. Not like a break, like a shift, a slow movement of ground under years of weight, because what they didn't know, what Evelyn didn't know, was that I had found something. Something in the attic 3 weeks ago while searching for old family photos. Something that changed everything. And they thought they had erased me from the story, but I'm about to show them. I never needed a seat at their table. I built my own. I was always the one standing just outside the frame, not the golden child, not the cautionary tale, just the quiet shape people forgot to name when retelling family stories. Growing up in Charleston meant Sunday brunches on the veranda, monogram napkins, and a house where nothing was ever truly private. Our home looked perfect in every way, and maybe that's why no one ever questioned what was wrong. My mother orchestrated everything like a campaign. Evelyn Hart, always polished, always performing, her smiles perfectly timed, her voice clipped and smooth like a television anchor. She hosted fundraisers in our backyard and organized charity galas that made it into the papers, and yet never remembered how I liked my tea. My father was a quieter kind of presence, a history professor with soft eyes and a distracted air. He loved facts, not feelings, and always assumed that silence meant peace. And then there was Daniel. Daniel, with his soft jaw and easy confidence, the son everyone wanted to brag about. Private school awards, varsity athlete, future lawyer. He had Evelyn's attention in a way I never quite did. He was her project, her brand extension. I watched him win without effort while I had to justify every minor choice, every hobby, every moment that didn't align with what was expected. Evelyn liked symmetry. Daniel and I ruined that. He for being too ideal, me for being too complicated. Still, I tried to belong. I tried to be useful. I offered to help plan his engagement party. I picked out color palettes and RSVP systems and even designed the floral mock-up. They thanked me like a wedding planner, not a sister. When Chloe, his fiancée, came over, she smiled tightly and never looked at me twice. Evelyn took her shopping for wedding dresses. I wasn't invited. I wasn't asked. I was mentioned once in passing. Olivia can help with calligraphy, like I was a detail, a decorative element. My childhood bedroom had been turned into a guest suite with matching linens and a full-body mirror. My books gone. Daniel's trophies still lined the family den. They never took those down. I lived an hour away by then, working as a layout designer for an architecture firm. Nothing glamorous, but stable. I made enough to pay rent, send holiday gifts, and stay out of the way. But even from a distance, I could feel the imbalance like a wire pulled too tight. When I asked if I could bring a +1 to the wedding, Evelyn said, "Let's focus on the family first." That's when I knew. No matter what I gave, it would never be enough to make me visible. One afternoon, I offered to proofread the wedding program. Evelyn laughed softly and said, "No need. Chloe's sister is handling all the logistics. She knows our style." Our, as if I didn't come from the same bloodline, as if my handwriting wasn't once on every science fair board Daniel ever turned in. I had a photo of us once, me holding his project, him grinning, arms flung wide. That photo isn't on the wall anymore. I remember the shift, starting around the time I turned 12. That was when Evelyn began correcting the way I laughed, when she suggested I stop wearing sneakers to dinner, when she asked, quietly, if I could brush out my curls. Daniel got to be messy, I had to be correct. My father didn't notice, or if he did, he thought it was normal. Just Evelyn being Evelyn. And I, being me, didn't push back. I learned early that silence buys you peace, but the older I got, the heavier that silence became. It pressed into my chest during every family photo where I stood to the side. It rang in my ears when no one asked me how my work was going. It tasted like lemon and ash every time Evelyn said, "You always make things harder than they have to be." She once said that on Christmas Eve when I brought up childhood stories she didn't like, as if memory was a stain to be scrubbed. I kept my distance after college, but I was never gone. I sent birthday cards, I RSVP'd early, I smiled when I was supposed to, dressed how they liked. But each year I felt the edges blur, as if I were being faded out slowly, politely, like the ending of a TV show no one watches anymore. When Daniel announced his engagement, I drove home with a bottle of wine and a handwritten list of ideas. Evelyn thanked me but reminded me the guest list would be tight. "These things are expensive," she said. "You'll understand when it's your turn." Only she never asked if I wanted a turn. I think part of her hoped I wouldn't. It would be easier for the narrative if I stayed single, stayed silent, stayed separate. Daniel got the spotlight, I got the glow from behind the curtain. But I kept showing up, I kept giving them the benefit of the doubt. I told myself they meant well, that families are messy, that maybe one day Evelyn would hug me without her arms feeling like judgment. That maybe Daniel would defend me. That maybe I'd get a place at the head table, not just the folding chair near the exit. I told myself these things until the day the wedding invitations went out, and I didn't receive one. That was when I stopped pretending I was part of the story. That was when I started writing my own. There's something strange about remembering pain. It doesn't arrive in neat scenes or clear dialogue. It seeps back in through smell, texture, silence. For me, it always starts with lemon-scented floor polish and the low hum of Evelyn's voice rehearsing guest lists in the kitchen. I was 12 when I first realized she didn't like me. She never said it outright. She didn't have to. It was in the way her eyes tightened when I answered questions too confidently in front of guests. It was in the way she praised Daniel for average grades, while I was told that 97% was almost excellent. Once, during a Christmas party, I wore the wrong dress. Black. Too sharp, not soft enough. Evelyn touched my shoulder and said, "You really should ask your sister what flatters your shape." I didn't have a sister, that was the joke. Just Daniel and me. Daniel who could spill red wine on the couch and still be charming. Daniel who once left our dog outside in the storm and was forgiven by morning. I spent that same storm in the garage drying wet blankets and holding the shaking animal against my chest. Evelyn never thanked me. She just reminded me that the towels I used were guest linens. My father, he existed in a different orbit. He loved me, I think, but he loved peace more. He said things like, "You know how your mother is, and just let it go." But letting it go turned me into a ghost in my own house. I remember one summer when I got into a writing program in New York. I was 16, terrified, excited, bursting to tell someone. Evelyn didn't look up from her planner when I shared the news. "That's very independent of you," she said, like ambition was a flaw. "But it's not Ivy League." When I said the program was fully funded, she nodded, finally approving of something because it cost her nothing. I spent that summer alone in a dorm with a broken AC unit, learning how to build characters who didn't apologize for taking up space. I returned to a house that hadn't noticed I was gone. No welcome back, no questions, just Daniel's college prep brochures on the table, and Evelyn planning another brunch. I left for college out of state and never really moved back. But the pull of that house, of that silence, it never left me. I called. I visited on holidays. I played the part. And then 5 years ago, things almost changed. That was the year Daniel nearly flunked out of law school. He called me, not Evelyn, for help. I stayed up 3 nights editing his essays. I coached him on interviews. He passed. He got the job. He never told anyone I helped. At the family dinner celebrating his new position, Evelyn raised a glass and said, "Daniel's always been so self-driven." I didn't say anything. I just smiled and cut into my overcooked salmon. A few weeks later, Daniel sent me a gift, a candle and a card that read, "Thanks for being there. No one else knew." That's the Heart way. Rewrite the truth, control the light, hide the scaffolding behind the chandelier. I accepted that for a long time, until the engagement, until the wedding, until the silence. You see, they never said I wasn't invited. They just never included me. I found out about the bridal shower through a tagged photo. I saw the rehearsal dinner plans in an email chain I wasn't meant to see, forwarded by mistake. I kept waiting for the invitation, for a call, for Evelyn to say it must have gotten lost, but nothing came. So I asked. I called her. "Just wondering," I said lightly, "do you need help with logistics for the wedding?" There was a pause. Then, "Everything's handled, Olivia, but thank you." That's when I knew. So I drove down the next weekend under the guise of bringing a birthday gift for my father. Evelyn wasn't surprised to see me. She opened the door like she'd been expecting this confrontation. "Let's not make this a thing," she said before I even crossed the threshold. "It's Daniel's day." My father stood behind her, quiet as always. "I just wanted to understand," I said. "Am I not invited?" She tilted her head. "It's a very curated event. It's not personal." But it was personal. It had always been. She didn't want me there. Because I didn't fit the picture, because I might ask the wrong question, wear the wrong dress, stand at the wrong angle in the family photo. And she couldn't risk that. I walked out without saying goodbye. I didn't cry in the car. I didn't scream. I drove to the coast and sat on a bench, staring at the dark waves for hours. When I got back to my apartment, I climbed into the attic storage for the first time in months. I had been avoiding that space because it smelled like damp paper and old memories, but I had a reason now. 3 weeks earlier, I'd found a sealed box marked Medical Richard. I hadn't opened it, not really, just peeked. But that night, I pulled it down, broke the seal, and read everything. Test results, letters, a notarized envelope. It was mine, not Daniel's. A DNA test, my name. And one undeniable fact. I wasn't who they said I was. I wasn't Evelyn's. And Richard, he had known. That moment didn't feel like a discovery. It felt like confirmation. I hadn't imagined it. I had been outcast for a reason. I had never been part of the picture because they never meant to frame me there to begin with. The wedding was 2 weeks away when the official silence turned into polite avoidance. No one called. No one checked in. I wasn't blocked, just blanked. Daniel didn't reply to the text I sent congratulating him. Evelyn posted Instagram stories of floral mock-ups and seating charts without a single mention of my name. It was as if I had quietly ceased to exist in their family narrative. But I couldn't stop thinking about the box in my attic, the paternity test, the quiet weight of paper that told me what I'd always suspected. I didn't come from Evelyn. My mother wasn't the woman who taught me to iron pillowcases and smile through criticism. She was someone else. Someone erased. The letter inside the box had no return address. It was a scanned note from a hospital social worker, short, clinical. It confirmed the adoption had been private, facilitated through Evelyn's family friend, sealed to protect reputations. My father signed it, so did Evelyn. There was no warmth, no explanation, just signatures and legal finality. That week, I started making my own plans. I didn't need permission to act. I didn't even need an invitation. I just needed clarity. I took a day off work and drove back to Charleston, not to the family house, but to the archives downtown. Public records, baptism certificates, medical notations. I didn't find everything, but I found enough. The real name of the woman who gave birth to me, a church record listing Richard as the emergency contact. The last name, Hart, had been added later. I drove to the small coastal town listed on the file. Nothing fancy, just a dot on the map with weathered storefronts and an old gas station. I walked through a cemetery until I found the name from the record, Margaret Elias, my mother. She had died when I was 3. No headstone, just a rusted plaque and overgrown grass. I stood there for a long time. No tears, just silence, like hers. And I made a decision. I would not be erased. I drove back home that night and opened the box one last time. I laid out the papers on my kitchen table, neatly, deliberately, and packed them into a clean white envelope, along with a letter. No threats, no accusations, just truth. I ended it with a sentence Evelyn would understand. Since you curated your guest list so carefully, I thought it only fair you received this contribution to the family archive. 2 days before the wedding, I mailed the envelope by express delivery. Then I bought myself a plane ticket, not to leave the country or flee the story, but to choose my own chapter. I booked a quiet weekend in Asheville, a mountain cabin with no cell signal and no polite voices brushing me aside. I left the same day the rehearsal dinner happened, and for the first time in years, I felt light. Not happy, not triumphant, just free. I didn't pack anything fancy, just books, hiking boots, a bottle of wine I'd been saving, and a photo, not of Evelyn or Daniel. Not even of Richard, but of me, age 6, dirt on my cheeks, holding a worm with both hands and grinning like it was gold, the girl they tried to cut from the frame. I didn't need their party. I had already sent my gift. Let them unwrap it. As soon as I stepped out of the rental car and walked up the driveway of my childhood home, I could already hear the faint sounds of laughter and soft music coming from the back garden. The place had been transformed with white string lights hanging from trees, elegant table settings with golden plates and cloth napkins, and a jazz trio tuning up near the patio. My mother had outdone herself as usual. Everything looked perfect, except me. I was already overdressed in a simple navy dress and flats while the others sparkled in tuxedos and satin gowns. Still, I reminded myself, I wasn't here to impress anyone. I was here because, despite everything, I believed my father deserved my presence. I had spent weeks building a 3D printed model of the original Matthews Construction headquarters, engraved with his name on the base. It was the most thoughtful gift I had ever made, and I had even stayed up 3 nights in a row finishing the final details. The moment I entered the garden, eyes turned toward me, but not with warmth. Some gave polite nods. Others whispered. Most just looked away. My brother Nathan stood near the head table, his hand casually resting on our father's shoulder as they laughed over some joke. He was in a tailored suit, looking every bit the heir to the family name. I waited for my father to notice me. He didn't. I waited for him to call out. He didn't. Instead, he gestured for Nathan to join him for a toast. "To my son," he said loudly as guests gathered around. "The one who's followed in my footsteps, carried on the family name and made me proud every single day." Everyone clapped. I stood at the edge of the crowd, holding my gift box like it weighed 100 pounds. My mother finally approached me. "You came," she said, not surprised, not pleased, just acknowledging. "You asked me to," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Well, just try to blend in. Don't make a scene," she added, brushing imaginary lint off her dress. I didn't respond. I walked to the gift table and placed my box carefully at the end. Then I turned and made my way to the far corner where no one would ask me questions. Over the next hour, I genuinely tried to participate. I congratulated Nathan, I made small talk with a cousin, I even helped carry extra champagne flutes when one of the staff tripped. But every time I opened my mouth, someone cut in. Every time I joined a conversation, it dissolved. It was like I had walked into a room full of people who had already decided I didn't belong. I caught glimpses of my father looking in my direction once or twice, but he never approached, never called me over. I wondered if he even knew I was there. The final blow came during the main toast. Everyone had taken their seats around the candlelit tables. My father stood again, glass raised. "Tonight," he began, "isn't just about me. It's about legacy, about what we pass on, about who we trust to carry the family name forward." I waited. Maybe this was it. Maybe he would finally acknowledge me, just once. "I'm proud of all my children," he said, pausing for effect, then added with a smirk, "except the loser sitting at the table." Laughter broke out, loud, sharp, real. I felt the heat crawl up my neck. I looked around. No one looked uncomfortable, not even my mother. I wasn't sure what hurt more, his words or their acceptance of them. I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I stood slowly, reached beneath my chair, and pulled out a small envelope from my purse. I walked calmly toward the gift table, picked up the model I had made, set the envelope next to it, and turned back to face the crowd. "Congratulations, Nathan," I said clearly, looking directly at my brother, "and happy birthday, Dad." Then I walked away. I didn't rush. I didn't look back. I heard some confused murmurs behind me, someone asking, "Was that Olivia?" And then a quiet laugh. My father's. It was dramatic. I didn't stop walking. I reached the front yard, unlocked my car, and sat inside for a moment, breathing. My hands weren't shaking. My throat wasn't tight. I felt something else. A stillness. A quiet clarity. The envelope I had left contained everything. A printed copy of the email exchange from 5 years ago, proving Nathan had taken credit for my software fix that saved the company. A screenshot of the folder timestamp, and a short note that said, "You always knew, you just didn't care." The model I had made, I'd glued a second inscription underneath, visible only if someone picked it up, built on someone else's work, carried by a borrowed name. I wasn't angry. I was done. I started the engine, backed out of the driveway, and didn't look in the rearview mirror once. I didn't need to. I already knew what I was leaving behind. It wasn't until I reached my hotel downtown, the gift box gone, the silence in the car lingering longer than the music ever could, that my phone rang. The caller ID read, "Aunt Linda." I hesitated. I hadn't spoken to her properly in years. Growing up, she had always been the quiet presence at family events, my father's younger sister, observant, soft-spoken, and often ignored by everyone except me. I answered, "Olivia?" Her voice trembled slightly, like she'd been holding something in too long. "I saw what happened tonight. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said flatly, tossing my purse onto the armchair. Dad made his point loud and clear. There was a pause. Then she said it. "Your father wasn't always like this, you know. There was a time when he questioned Nathan too. A time he doubted him." I sat down slowly. "What do you mean?" Her words came carefully, as if chosen from a pile she'd been rearranging for years. "Back in 2004, when Nathan was in high school, your father suspected he wasn't his biological son. He had doubts. He asked for I didn't breathe. I couldn't." "What happened?" "Your mother intercepted it. I don't know all the details, but Edward gave her the authority to handle the lab logistics. He trusted her. A few weeks later, she showed him the results. Nathan was his. End of story." But I remember the tension. I remember the quiet fights behind closed doors. "Are you saying the test was faked?" "I'm saying," she replied softly, "your mother wanted Nathan to be the heir more than anyone else, and your father, he wanted to believe what she showed him." I stood up, heart pounding, walking to the window where the city lights blurred in my vision. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because tonight, he humiliated you in front of everyone, and I saw your face. You deserved the truth, all of it." Her voice cracked. "And because you're the only one who ever made time for me at those events." My mind began piecing it together like a jigsaw puzzle that had been flipped over for years. Nathan's constant pedestal, Dad's sudden change years ago, Mom's obsessive control, and something else. 5 years ago, when the company almost went under, when I had quietly rebuilt the system in 1 week of sleepless nights, the software I wrote, the architecture I redesigned, the back-end overhaul I never took credit for, that had been the moment Dad shifted entirely toward Nathan, claiming he saved the family legacy. But I had the code, I had the files, I had the email chain, and now I had a thread, an origin point of a deeper lie. "Do you still have the test?" I asked. "No," she said, "but I have a copy of the lab work order, and the signature isn't Edward's, it's your mother's. She rerouted the test." I whispered. He doesn't even know. He thinks he does, Aunt Linda replied, but maybe it's time someone told him otherwise. She paused. Olivia, if you want it, I'll send it to you tonight. You deserve to decide what to do with it. I stared at my reflection in the glass. Same face, same tired eyes, but something behind them had shifted. Send it, I said. I hung up and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my laptop bag. It wasn't just about a party anymore. It wasn't even about the insult. This was about erasure, about fabrication, about a family tree with roots grafted to support the wrong branch. I opened my email and saw the subject line within minutes, Document 2004 Lab Request. And as I opened the file, something cold settled in my chest. Not anger, not sadness, just a quiet, patient kind of focus. The kind that grows in the dark for years and then finally finds light. After Aunt Linda's call, I couldn't sleep. The silence in my apartment felt heavier than ever, but I knew I needed to do something. I retrieved my old work laptop from the back of my closet, a device I hadn't touched since leaving the family company years ago. Surprisingly, it still powered up and retained access to the firm's archival servers. 5 years ago, when the company was on the verge of collapse, I had built the core of our accounting system from scratch. No one knew but me and Nathan. He had asked for help, panicked and out of his depth. I did everything. I coded all night, wrote documentation, and stayed invisible. No credit, no thanks. Just the quiet satisfaction of saving something my father had built. I told myself it was for the family. I told myself it didn't matter if no one noticed. But now, I needed to know how far the lie had gone. I logged into the old server. The system was bloated, slow, and unfamiliar after years of changes, but deep in an encrypted backup labeled Ops Restore A Pile, I found a folder. Inside it were emails from Nathan's account to my father, copied to legal. One of them stopped me cold. Dad, Olivia's helping me with the back-end overhaul. I told her I'd take the lead, but she's handling most of the code. If it works, you can say it was my project. I just want it to succeed. My heart thudded. He had admitted it. Clearly. Openly. And below, my father's response chilled me further. If she's willing to help without asking questions, let her. But this needs to come from you, not her. You're the future of this company. I sat back in my chair. All these years, I thought maybe my father didn't know, that Nathan had lied to him. But no, he knew. He knew the truth and still chose the lie. He chose the son who looked right in photos, who spoke like a CEO, who had never built anything with his own hands. I clicked into another thread, this one from a month later. The patent filing. My name. Nowhere. Just Nathan's. I remembered how he had smiled that week, how he had received praise at the board meeting while I sat in the back, silent, still recovering from 40 hours of work with no sleep. I clicked through more files. My original code, time-stamped, documented, clean. I had stored everything. Diagrams, whiteboard sketches I photographed before writing a single line. No one could fake that trail. My hand shook, but I wasn't crying. I copied everything to a secure drive. The silence around me sharpened into focus. It wasn't just about the software anymore. It was about how they had decided, without telling me, that I would always be the support beam, never the name on the sign. I opened a new email, attached the files, typed a short message. For your records, attribution matters. I sent it to the company's legal department. Then I sent another copy to the patent office. Finally, I blind copied it to my father. No greeting, no signature, just truth. My phone buzzed. Nathan, hey, hope you're okay. Mom can be a bit much sometimes. Let's talk soon. As if I had bruised my knee, not been publicly humiliated. As if a text could erase a decade of being used. I didn't respond. I closed the laptop, stood slowly, and stretched my arms. I felt different. Not broken, not betrayed, just awake. The fog was gone. I had spent years dimming my light to avoid outshining the family favorite. Not anymore. They wanted a curated story? I had just rewritten the ending. The knock came late, almost midnight. I had just finished brushing my teeth when I heard it. 3 slow, hesitant taps against the hotel door. I knew before I opened it. My mother stood in the hallway, her cardigan pulled tightly around her shoulders, face pale, eyes tired but strangely calm. She didn't wait for an invitation. She stepped inside like she still had the right to, and sat on the edge of the couch. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. I leaned against the wall and crossed my arms, waiting. "I saw the file you sent," she said finally. Her voice was low, almost rehearsed. "I figured you would. So you found out." "I didn't find out, I remembered." She looked at her hands. "The day they filed that patent, I begged your father to include you. He said it would ruin the narrative." I didn't respond. I just watched her, waiting for the real reason she was here. "But that's not why I came," she continued. "It's about something else. Something I should have told you years ago." Her hands trembled slightly. "Do you remember the summer you turned 9, when you asked why we didn't look alike?" I nodded slowly. "I said genes are funny, that kids take after distant relatives." "I remember," I said. It was a lie. She looked up at me then, her eyes glistening. "Your father, Edward, isn't your biological father." My stomach didn't drop, my hands didn't shake. Somehow, I'd always known, or at least suspected, but I still asked. "Then who?" "His name was Michael," she whispered. "I met him before Edward and I married." It was brief. "A mistake, maybe, but you weren't. You were never a mistake." I stayed silent, let her speak. "When I found out I was pregnant, Edward said he would raise you as his own. But after Nathan was born, things changed. He started treating you differently, and I let him. I didn't protect you. I rationalized it, told myself I was keeping the family together, but the truth is, I was afraid that if I told you, I'd lose you. You lost me anyway," I said quietly. She winced. "I know, and I deserve that." She pulled a folded envelope from her purse. "This is the original paternity result. Edward made me destroy the copies, but I kept one. I don't even know why. Maybe I hoped someday I'd have the courage to give it to you." I took the envelope and set it aside. I didn't need it. Her eyes followed it for a second before shifting back to me. "I treated Nathan like the heir because he thought Nathan was the only one who could carry his legacy. But you were always the one with the real talent, the real strength. You're more him than either of us ever admitted." I almost laughed. "You mean the man I never met?" "No," she said softly. "I mean Edward. For all his faults, he built something. So did you. You just didn't get to put your name on it." I sat down across from her. "Why tell me this now?" She hesitated. "Because I saw the look on your face at the party, and I saw the model you gave him. I saw how much it cost you to show up, knowing how he'd treat you, and I saw how he crushed it anyway." I didn't respond. There wasn't anything left to say. "I don't expect forgiveness," she added, "but I need you to know the truth. You deserved that much." I nodded once, slowly. She stood, walked to the door, then turned back. "You were always the best of us, Olivia, even when we made you feel like the least." And then she left. The door clicked shut behind her. I sat there for a long time staring at the envelope. Eventually I opened it. Inside was the test. Simple, clinical, undeniable. And yet it didn't change anything. Edward wasn't my biological father, but I had still built the legacy he'd clung to, still poured myself into the thing that bore his name, still showed up, year after year, hoping to be seen. That night, I didn't cry, I didn't rage, I slept, deeply, peacefully. For the first time in years, my heart stopped whispering that I had to earn love from a family that had already decided I didn't belong. The morning I woke up to send the package, the sky was as pale and cold as the silence that had followed the dinner. I sat by the window of my hotel room, fingers tracing the miniature replica of my father's company headquarters. I had spent weeks designing it with precision. Every window, every architectural detail carved in CAD and 3D printed, then hand-finished. It wasn't just a model. It was a message, a memory, a statement. I flipped it upside down, opened a secret base I had installed weeks ago, and inserted 3 things. First, the printout of the email Nathan had sent my father, the one where he openly admitted I was the one who rebuilt the system and asked to claim it as his own for the company's sake. Second, the paternity results showing I was Edward Matthews's only biological child. Third, a handwritten note that simply read, "Truth weighs nothing until it lands." I sealed the compartment, wrapped the model in matte black packaging, and booked a courier to deliver it straight to the Matthews estate. I didn't add a return address. I didn't need to. I sat by the window, watched the van pull away, and let the air settle back into the quiet. I didn't expect a phone call or apology. I wasn't waiting for redemption. I just wanted the weight of truth to reach the table where I had been erased. I left the hotel, wandered the city for hours, ignored my buzzing phone. But when I returned that evening, I found an envelope slid under the door. No name on the front, no markings, just the faint scent of cedar, and inside, a letter. My father's handwriting, sharp, controlled, unmistakably his. "Olivia," it began. "I received your model. At first, I thought it was just that, a model. Then I saw the inscription. Then I found the hatch. Then I saw what you left me, the documents, the truth, the note." I stared at them for a long time. I poured a drink. I didn't finish it. Instead, I sat down in the study and opened the letter Nathan sent me years ago. I had buried it, not physically, but emotionally, because I knew what it meant, and I didn't want to deal with what it demanded of me. Cowardice, I suppose, dressed up in the name of keeping peace. You see, I always knew you were the smarter one, the builder, the quiet engine in the background. But I told myself that recognizing you meant tearing down everything I had already built around Nathan. And I wasn't ready for that, not until I opened that box and held your work in my hands. You gave me something more honest than any family photo or legacy speech. You gave me the chance to see clearly, even if it came late. I confronted your mother. We didn't yell. We didn't need to. She knew what I knew. And for the first time, she didn't defend the lie. I spoke to Nathan. He didn't deny the email. He said he did what he thought was expected of him. I don't know what kind of man that makes him, but I do know this. You are the only one who ever did something for this family without needing to be seen, and I am sorry for not seeing you sooner. The model now sits in my office, right where the family photo used to be. I didn't remove the photo out of spite. I removed it because I realized what legacy should look like, not curated, not airbrushed, but earned. You asked nothing of me, and that's what makes this harder. I have nothing to offer you now except acknowledgement. If you walk through the doors again someday, I will stand up. I will tell the board, the staff, the family, she is the one who built the system that saved us. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect a response. But I want you to know, I see you, fully, and I won't look away again. With more regret than I'll ever admit aloud, Edward Matthews. I folded the letter back into its envelope. I didn't cry, not out of numbness, but because the letter wasn't a wound. It was a scar forming, proof of something broken, healing, but still real. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, holding the envelope. Then I stood, opened the closet, and pulled out the backup model, the first prototype I had kept for myself. I turned it over, checked the base, and saw the empty compartment. I slipped the letter inside. No anger, no revenge, just truth, shelved where I could find it if I ever needed reminding. The weight had shifted, not gone, but balanced. For once, it wasn't me carrying it alone. I never went back to the Matthews house, not for dinner, not for birthdays, not even when my cousin got married 6 months later and sent a handwritten invite with a PS begging me to attend because it wouldn't feel right without you. It's not that I was angry, not anymore. I was just done performing. A few weeks after my father's letter, I received a second package, smaller this time. No return label, but I recognized the careful wrapping immediately. Inside was another letter and something wrapped in soft velvet. The letter was shorter. Olivia, I meant what I wrote, but I needed you to have this. I should have given it to you years ago. Your grandfather wore this every day until he passed. I always planned to give it to my son, but I see now, I was waiting for the wrong person. You're the one who carries our name with weight, not just by blood, but by backbone. Your father, E. Matthews. I unwrapped the velvet and found a worn pocket watch, the same one I had seen in photos from the early days of the company, always clipped to my grandfather's vest. I turned it over. On the back, 3 initials were engraved, E.M.L. Edward, Milton, Matthews. I smiled, not out of sentimentality but understanding. I didn't need it for status or validation. I had already proven what I was made of. But holding that watch in my hand was like standing at the end of a long hallway, turning around and seeing every locked door behind me, finally unlocked. I didn't call him, I didn't send a thank you card, but I placed the watch on my own desk, beside the nameplate from my startup, the one I founded after quietly stepping down from my corporate role last fall. No big announcements, no exit interview, just a clean break. I built something of my own, something quiet, solid, meaningful. My clients don't care about my last name. They don't ask who my father is. They only care that the systems I build don't crash, that the code runs, that I listen. I've learned to find joy in that simplicity, in being enough without needing to be seen. Once in a while, my phone rings and it's my mother. I don't answer, but I don't block her either. Her voicemails have softened. They used to be cold, guilt-laced. Now they sound smaller, not sad, not desperate, just real. And that's something. Nathan hasn't reached out since the confrontation. That too says enough. Some relationships are built on imbalance, and when you step out of the shadow, the whole thing collapses. Let it. I still talk to my aunt, occasionally to one or two cousins, but mostly I talk to the people who've earned a seat in my life. The ones who know my story, the ones who didn't laugh when I was humiliated in front of 40 people, the ones who didn't need to see the documents to believe me. One of them, Avery, sits across from me now, in my new office. She doesn't ask about my family anymore. She just asks what I want for lunch. We build things together. Not companies, not legacies, but space, trust, peace. Sometimes we sit on the roof and drink coffee and watch the city below and don't say anything at all. That silence used to terrify me. Now it feels like home. I still keep my father's letter in the model's base, still turn it over every few months and reread the last lines. I don't do it out of pain. I do it to remember that clarity costs something, but it also gives you everything. I've stopped searching for closure. It's not something people give you, it's something you give yourself. Sometimes it looks like a letter, sometimes it looks like a pocket watch. Sometimes it looks like walking away from a table where you were never welcome and setting your own, smaller, quieter, but filled with people who see you clearly. And that, I've learned, is enough.